we doing good? I'm the Chief Digital Services Officer for the City and County of San Francisco, and I just wanted to say how completely delighted I am that San Francisco gets to be the host of Lesbians Who Tech each year. The most, not just the most queer, inclusive, badass tech conference you'll go to, but maybe the best tech conference you'll go to, period. Right? Am I right? I've been with the city for around a year, and here's what we're doing. We're building public services designed around the people that use them. This is user-centered design at a government scale, and it's something that my team has been working on. I have a small team. And I'm just going to give you a heads up for the theme for this talk is we're hiring. So I'm going to selfishly use my platform for that. This is, with apologies for colleagues from SAP, because I know there's some good folks over at SAP trying to do things, but this is basically the state of government technology right now. This is what we're asking people to use, and it sucks. It looks like it's been designed by someone who works in a cupboard, and as opposed to a closet, although I'm just complicating things now. And I believe, and I hope you're with me, that if you work in public services, it's one of the hardest jobs you can do, and you deserve the very best technology out there to do your job. Not just, these old systems, they don't work. It's like when you go into work, you have to kind of take off your human jacket and put on your bureaucrat jacket and regress 20 years in technology terms. And it's not acceptable, right? It's not acceptable for people who are doing some of the most important work out there. Some of it's a tech problem, some of it's about just making products better, and definitely product design is what my team is focused on, but we're also working on services. We're also taking a service view to how we design public services. So thinking through what are the policies in place and how do we design those? What are some of the business processes that sit behind these things? Because you can build the best web form ever, but if it's like an interface to a terrible process, it's still going to feel horrible to interact with government. And the other thing we're thinking around is organization design. So how do we make sure that our government changes and evolves in order to meet the needs of our residents, of our users? We did a bit of an inventory in my team, and we found out that the city has around 450 services. And for those of you in tech companies, that's like having 450 products in your organization. It's absolutely huge, and the scale of our challenge is ginormous. Did I mention we're hiring? If you like tricky problems, is this the place for you? And what I want to talk about today, most of all, is how we design these services and how we build these services for everybody. How we take in mind building equity into everything we do. And I'm thinking about this in three ways at the moment. One, at the smallest level, at the interaction level. So how are we using our words, our content design? How are we talking about things like gender? How are we making sure that our images are, not kind of whitewashed stock photography, but that we have a true representation of our beautifully diverse communities in San Francisco represented in all of our services? And also, what options are we giving people? How are we allowing people to choose other and clarify to us what that means to them? How are we building into every interaction the opportunity for people to be seen as individuals? So that's one way we're thinking about building equity into our services at the interaction level. The second way is at the access level. So how are we making sure that people with disabilities can access our services, that we're coding things that can be read by browser-allowed services, by people with disabilities? And how are we also building things in for our communities who speak different languages? So here in San Francisco, we have Chinese spoken, Mexican spoken, Tagalog spoken, as well as English. And how do we make sure that all our services are accessible in those languages? And not just translated. I'm not just talking about translating our content, but actually thinking about how do we design a website and services around it that are sufficiently flexible, that content can change, and cultural context can change as well, that we're thinking about navigation and everything that goes along with our language. And then finally, on access, how are we thinking about the devices that we use? How are we thinking about the context that people are in? Not everybody has unlimited data plans. So how about we just don't make our pages like really slow to load? Thinking about everybody's opportunity to use public services is part of what our team's doing. And then finally, you can have the most accessible, the most beautifully designed product that is incredibly inclusive for everybody. But I would also like to think about our legislative code, which is a different kind of code, but it shares a lot in common with programming. Because legislation, a lot of legislation is really just if-then statements. And so, not to trivialize the work of our lawmakers, but it is, right? It is. It's a lot of if-then statements and policy statements. And so how do we write that code? Because just like our algorithms, legislation, well-meaning legislation can have unintended consequences. So how are we making sure that our legislators are learning in the same way that we want our AI to learn? Finally, and I think maybe most importantly, and definitely most challengingly for me, how do we make sure that power dynamics are designed as well? Something that I feel really strongly about is that the burden of proof for entitlement to things like benefits, to things like public services, is always on the person who has been the most oppressed. Have you ever noticed that? We're always asking people to prove to us whether they were incarcerated, to prove to us that they were on a low income, to prove to us that they lived in a disadvantaged area in order that they can have access to our support, when actually we are the reason why they were incarcerated. They lived in public housing or they were disadvantaged in some way. I'm so glad you agree. Come and work with us. So how do we redesign our power structures? I'm not going to lie, this is like one of our biggest challenges and it's going to take us a while to do. I'm hoping with all of your help we can do it. I'll give you some examples of how we're trying to do this. We've built a way for people to apply for affordable housing online. Previously, this was an entirely paper-based process. You had to stand in line because, of course, the deadline, everybody waits till the deadline to turn in their application forms. It's like a human thing. And so, of course, there was a line around the block. Well, if you're working 2 jobs, who has time to stand in line around the block waiting for affordable just to turn in your application form for affordable housing? So we built a service that enables you to do that, and now 85% of all applications for affordable housing in San Francisco are made online. This is just one of our services, right? We're also working to find legal help for immigrants because lots of immigrants will come to our services, right? This is really about how do we enable our staff, city staff, to be able to signpost people in the right direction so they can get the legal support that they need when the time comes. And finally, it's always a crowd pleaser, cannabis is something that we are working on. I thought you would like that. Cannabis is something that we're working on because it's been legalized here. So how do we make sure that not only that our businesses can get up and running and get permitted and be able to run their cannabis businesses in this industry. There's so many puns here, I'm almost like tripping out. This growth industry. I had to do one. Not only are we helping our businesses get up and running, but we're also making sure that those smaller businesses, those that might be run by people who traditionally haven't been seen as part of the business community, they can legitimize their operations, they can become part of the city family, and we can help them grow their businesses, unintended. I don't know if anyone's looked at our website lately, but we have some work to do. We know that. And so that's why we're redesigning our website from the ground up. We're putting our services front and center. We're making sure that people can find the thing they need to do so that they can interact with government successfully, that they can just get in and get out if that's what they need, or else if they need a more complex interaction with us, if they need to build a relationship with government, then it's really easy to do so using our digital services. So, I'm not sure if I mentioned this already, but come and work for the city. If challenging problems is your thing, if having an impact is your thing, if building human-centered services is your thing, then definitely hit me up on Twitter, check out our jobs page, apply to work with the city, and I hope that I will see you all here again next year and can tell you the amazing progress that we've made.